Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Hope everyone's had a great weekend so far and enjoying the day off. I wanted to create this video just to talk about a theoretical rematch between Joe Biden and President Trump. It's something that I do think is a realistic possibility. Right now, if I had to guess, I probably would peg it around a 30% chance of happening, just because Biden hasn't, completely dismissed the notion about running for reelection, despite him being one of the, or being the old, would be the oldest president again to assume office in the event that he was reelected for a second term. And it would be the same thing for President Trump. He would be next to Biden, the oldest president to hold the office. And, Trump running again right now, I'll say that's around a 50% chance. So not necessarily more likely than not, but we can't, it's definitely a non-zero possibility. Also, just wanted to toss out there, I did some posts today on my Twitter feed talking about, or not really talking, just commenting on these two pretty interesting articles about Ned Lamont, Democratic governor of Connecticut, refusing to add additional taxes following pretty substantial tax increases in 2011 and 2015. And same thing in New York, where a group of Democratic lawmakers are trying to instate a wealth tax in New York based on the increase of various types of assets of billionaires, where the asset gain, unrealized capital gain of those assets. So just two interesting reads. I definitely think it's worth checking out. And yeah, now I'm just gonna delve into the video here. Um, you know, Here in 2020, we had a pretty solid win by Joe Biden. Again, in kind of the common culture and the media, in part because of those mail-in ballots taking several days to count and declare Joe Biden the winner. It was viewed that this was a close election. Again, I'm going to argue it wasn't a terribly close election. Joe Biden won by 7.1 million votes. He won by a larger margin than Barack Obama did in 2012 against Mitt Romney, and no one really called that a close election. The only reason why it was close was that, of course, between states like Arizona, Georgia, Wisconsin, there was only about 40,000 votes or so separating Donald Trump and Joe Biden, meaning that, Trump's votes were very efficiently distributed around the United States. But again, I don't really think it was fair to call it a per se close election. Part of that is that you had a pretty unpopular incumbent. Um, you know, I There was a good op-ed in the Wall Street Journal by the editorial board, basically saying after Trump issued that statement about McConnell earlier this week, that Joe Biden didn't really beat Trump. Trump beat Trump, and I think that was 100% on point. And you can see this. You know, Trump tried to be, kind of like to identify himself as a wartime president because of the COVID crisis. Something that I do think that can be objectively agreed upon was not handled in a great manner. I would say it was handled rather incompetently by the federal government, and definitely in terms of national leadership by the president. So, we get to November 3rd and we have a net -8 approval margin for Trump. And ultimately, these numbers are more or less what we saw in terms of our final result, with Trump outperforming it a little bit. About 2.5, yeah, about 2.3% higher than that approval number. About 1.5% lower on the disapproval number, but roughly what you would expect. And that's like another thing that maybe we'll go into another day. The polls, while they were off in select states by a decent amount, such as in Wisconsin and Michigan, for the most part, they were within what is considered a normal standard polling error. especially in terms of national level polls and for most state polls as well. Now, meanwhile, on the flip side, you have Joe Biden, who right now it's tough to really extrapolate a ton from his approval rating because nearly every president in American history, with the exception, of course, of Donald Trump, has enjoyed a honeymoon period. Where, as you can see, day one of office met 17 positive approval rating, and to where we are today, roughly a 16.4% net approval rating. My best guess is that we give it another 2 or 3 months, and we'll start to see these numbers settle around, more reflecting the current state of our, divided politics, probably something more resembling the popular vote of probably, if I had to guess, give it 2, 3 months, and this is going to be closer to 51% approving, 45% disapproving, would be my best guess. Biden probably will still say net positive, but I would definitely say somewhere within that 5 to 10 point net positive range. So, there was a good article here in the Times, I believe last week, on the 10th, yes, last week, basically talking a little bit about why lots of Republicans are leaving the party. And look, I think that this is partly overstated, and they acknowledge it because after every election, there is a certain amount of party switching, and there is a decent amount of purging or cleaning of voter rolls to make sure that inactive people or people who have moved or passed are no longer on the voting rolls that do cause these numbers to fluctuate. But they say that in 25 states that have easily available data, 140,000 Republicans left the party. And you saw that pick up considerably after the riots, like the Capitol Hill riot, insurrection, domestic terror attack, however you want to call it. You see here that in California, for example, there was 1,020 Republican changes on January 5th, then 3,243 on January 7th. In Arizona, there was 233 Republican changes in the first 5 days of January, and then 3,317 next week. It's tough to really say where that's coming from. I would gather to say that most of that is coming from, traditional Republican voters, your traditional suburban kind of stereotypical Republican voter who tends to affiliate with the Republican parties on those major, often like economic issues. However, they were completely turned off to Donald Trump. Maybe they voted for Biden, then split their tickets and voted down ballot for the Republicans. And those are the people I think are most likely. However, I would also say that maybe there's a chance that some of those people are, Trump-aligned voters who saw most Republican legislators, at least in the Senate, vote to affirm the election and not profess sufficient loyalty to Trump and decided to leave the party. It's tough to say. And most of these are switching from Republicans to independents. So it's also tough to say how much of that really impacts in the elections. Maybe they change to independent, but they still vote a straight ticket Republican. Again, it's tough to say, but I do think it is indicative of, at least on a relative basis, between Republicans and Democrats, stronger fracturing in the Republican coalition than in the Democratic voting coalition. So, we see here the map from this past election with, Georgia and Arizona being flipped to Biden, along with the Rust Belt states and Nebraska's 2nd district. I think this is important because, especially if we add in, we can tell here pretty clearly what are our safe, tilt, lean, red and blue states. But if we add in our filter here for, yes. If we add in our comparison from the past several elections, we can see some pretty, clear trends. Obviously, 2016 to 2020, we had a national shift towards the Democrats. So we are going to expect there to be, pretty uniform blue shift. But if we expand this out to 2012, we can start to get a little bit of a better sense of where, our kind of voter coalitions are moving. I explained this in my video yesterday or a few days ago, but obviously strong trends in the north and Midwest of the country towards the Republicans. Meanwhile, in the Southwest and in the case of Georgia and Virginia, some pretty strong trends towards the Democrats, which I think will continue. However, I also want to say that if we have Trump, reelect or renominated again, and he's in a rematch against Biden, I think that he's going to have a pretty tough go of it. I think absent something catastrophic happening to the Biden presidency that craters his popularity in the final year before the election, I think he's going to have a lot of challenges, really. Trump will have a lot of challenges trying to win a second term. And so we can see here, this is our election map from 2020, how things ended up. I'm going to go in here and add in our toss-ups, which I think are, relatively accepted as being traditional toss-up states here, and also toss in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And I'm gonna add in our our kind of like lean filter, just so we can get a sense of how things would tilt. However, just kind of moving through, I think that starting at some of our usual suspects have started in the West and move east. I think that New Mexico, I think Colorado, which right now marked as solid, generally it would be marked as like a safe blue state. Now I think it is definitely a solid blue state in the Trump era. For New Mexico, I think generally speaking, it's been like a lean blue state in recent elections. I think that at this point it's moved into the solid or the safe Democrat category. Tradition in this past election, Arizona and Nevada, these were tilting blue states, right? Arizona was barely won by Biden by about 0.3 percentage points. Nevada by about 2.5 percentage points by Biden. At this point, I think that these are, if we saw this rematch, these would be solid leaning states. And I'm going to do the same for Georgia because of those suburban shifts that the state has seen. In the case of Nebraska's second district, I think that this would now be a safe Democratic district. Of course, redistricting will play a big role in this, how this would actually look like. However, I think as it stands right now, that solid margin that Joe Biden was able to secure there in the mid-high single digits, I think he would win by double digits in 2024. Minnesota, I'm going to mark it as a safe blue state. Many people thought it may be a toss-up in 2020 or it was tilting blue, going the way of the rest of the Rust Belt. But in a rematch, I think this is the same thing. Looking at Iowa, I think that it's still Iowa and Ohio still lean enough towards Trump that it would be difficult for Biden to carry it. However, I'm going to mark these as just tilting red states. I still think Trump would be able to come out on top due to the the predominant trends. However, I also think that he would see substantial defections from urban and suburban voters that, may have stuck by him this go around, even if they didn't like his demeanor. Same thing in our Rust Belt states. I'm going to move these from being what we would consider, if I was doing this prediction against, normal candidates, kind of like in my previous video, I would mark these tilt blue. These I'm going to move as leaning blue, because frankly, I think that enough damage has been done. And same thing with New Hampshire. Like normally I would say this is a tilting to leaning blue state. However, in the Trump era, this is going to be a safe blue state. Which leaves us in terms of the ones that we need to fill out is North Carolina. And again, pretty inelastic state. However, I do think that this go around, Trump would not be able to carry it. And I think that Biden would, this would be a tilting blue state at this point. And now I kind of want to just go in and like color in the rest of the map just so we get a better sense of the changes here. I think that, in the case of Texas, we would see this state now tilt blue. It would definitely, again, like normal election predictions, I would say right now it would be a leaning red state. However, in the post-Trump era, with the damage that I think Trump and a lot of his acolytes like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert have done to the GOP, I think that this is going to tilt towards the Democrats. Again, normally I would say that Florida is a leaning blue state, or sorry, excuse me, a tilting to leaning red state. However, I'm going to mark this as not as a tilt blue, but a tilt red, where I do think that the Democrats would have a decent chance of winning this, although I think Trump has enough support, enough buffer there, and the trends there are conclusive enough to be able to, carry him out over the top. Kansas, due to the growth of the Kansas City suburbs, I do think that this is going to be a, move kind of out of the solid red category to a safe red. Same thing with Montana. It was safe red entering in this election. I would move it down to lean red. Alaska was considered safe red. I'm going to move it to lean red. And, I will go through and I think do the same thing with Indiana going down from solid red to safe red. Maine 2nd district, I would move it back from downgrade it from safe red to lean red. And what else? Yeah, I think that would be about it in terms of the electoral map changes. But this would be my prediction for how the election would fare. I would imagine that Biden, which managed to win by about 4.5 percentage points, may be able to carry this election, by upwards of 6 or 7 percentage points nationally. And I do think that, with the right circumstances, with Trump being Trump and, Biden having at least a decent enough popularity, and of course the advantages of incumbency, it wouldn't surprise me if he could turn this extreme, resounding electoral college victory into, just say, this may be considered a landslide, but into a real landslide with states like Florida, Ohio, and Iowa flipping over and potentially even making Alaska and Montana competitive. So, it would definitely be interesting to see. I'm really hoping that does not happen because, one, I would like to see, as a Republican, I would like to see the party move past the Trump era and try to find candidates that can appeal to, more centrist voters and not just the, kind of right-wing populist base that Trump helped solidify and in many ways bring into the party. And, in the case of the Democrats, I think Biden would be a fine candidate to run again. But I do think, for objectively speaking, for the sake of the Democrats, I do think it'd be better for the party if they found, kind of like the next generation of leaders to, kind of assume the mantle. But again, I'm a little speaking as a Republican. I do think it'd be, great for someone to move so that, in a new direction for the party, so that they're able to, kind of retain some of the working class voters that Trump successfully brought into the party, while also, being able to, regain support among, suburban, more centrist voters, and of course, maybe even continue some of the inroads that Trump made in his presidency with Latino voters, especially in states like Texas and Florida. So, this will be it for the video. I hope you guys found it interesting. This is will be my final prediction as of right now. I probably won't do another one of these until we get a little bit more clarity, but I will keep on, in terms of who's running, if Trump runs again, of course, I will, update this prediction. However, I will say that I will keep on a kind of like monthly cadence for updating my House, Senate, and presidential electoral college map predictions between now and 2023 or so. So, anyways, that's it. Thanks again so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.